by finances, investing, estate and retirement planning? Well, I went to school so you don't have to. Welcome to Finances and with Kathy and Jennifer.
Welcome to Finances and Listener Questions. Happy New Year! We are so glad that you are here and ready to join us in 2021. We had some listener questions, so today we'll cover: should you use a credit freeze or lock? Should we share our banking accounts with our partner or have many accounts? Why is paying down a loan like free money? And how do we budget for projects in the coming year?
So everyone is aware that scammers are stealing our credit card numbers and other accounts on the dark web, or it's a possibility, very, very possible, and that our data is being stolen. So how can you protect yourself? You can do that by either freezing or locking your credit report. Locking your credit report is a little bit different than freezing it, so make sure you're choosing the right option for you. NerdWallet recommends that you be careful with locks because they can charge you a fee for this service. All Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion offer it, but some of them charge an extra fee for it. So a lock is when you can allow a lender access to your data, and then you lock it again by using your phone and a special PIN on that account versus asking them to open and close that.
A freeze is probably the way to go, though. It is free at each bureau and helps since our credit risk is high. Federal law requires that this service be offered at no charge. You can still get your credit score quarterly at no cost and restrict anyone from seeing your credit report until you unfreeze it. If you need to let a lender see your information, you can freeze it again after the inquiry by calling the credit service company. A freeze actually offers more legal protection because it's a service offered versus a contract you sign and pay for, as with a lock. Freezes are covered under federal law.
So the difference between a freeze and a lock is because a lock is you entering into a contract with one of the credit services, there's some gray area as to whether or not you're covered on certain things versus a freeze, which the federal law says that they have to offer this. And so it seems like there's actually more coverage and it's free. So it seems like freeze is the way to go. I know where I work, our data was exposed and it was posted on the dark web. So they have offered us lots of free things, but to include encouraging us to freeze our accounts, which I did myself. Has that happened to you, Jennifer?
No, it has not.
Have you considered freezing your credit?
No.
So the benefit of it is that by contacting them, they can go ahead and freeze your account, which means that if anybody tries to do a new inquiry into it, they're going to get that it's frozen. Where if I wanted to go open a credit card or something and I knew that there was going to be an inquiry done on it, I could contact any of the credit bureaus and ask them to unfreeze it, and then I would need to call back and have them freeze it again. Some of the drawbacks that freezing your account can cause. First of all, you might forget that your account is frozen and then be turned down for credit. So you just need to keep in mind that if you're applying for anything, you have frozen your account and you'll have to call them to get it unfrozen. Usually you're just making a phone call to have that happen. But before you're applying for any type of new credit, you're going to want to contact them. Another possibility is that you can be lulled into thinking that no one can get into your credit or open credit in your name because you have it frozen. There are still possibilities of that happen, that it can be compromised. So really the only way to keep on top of your data is to make sure that you are checking your credit report. And remember, you can do that at no charge if you spread out those 3 reports over the course of a year, every quarter. And you can find out more about that in our episode called Bad Money Moves, which was number 42. And finally, it is one more step when you're applying for credit to have it unfrozen, but I think it's a benefit worth having.
Yes, and there are plenty of positives. The positives include that your current creditors can still see your records as well as any debt collectors. Marketers can still see your reports so they can send offers. Some government or child support agencies can see them. Potential employers or current employers can still get limited permission to check your credit. You can freeze your child's credit as well at no charge, and this is especially important as you may not be thinking of pulling their reports because they wouldn't have one.
You're not thinking of checking their credit. So if you freeze it, you don't have to worry about it as often because you might not be thinking of pulling their reports.
Consumer Reports says lock all 3. Otherwise, it's like locking your front door and then leaving the back door wide open.
I would not personally have thought of freezing a minor's credit report because they wouldn't have credit yet. But I think it's a great idea to be thinking about how can somebody use their Social Security number to do something like that. And if you're not checking on that account, then it seems like it could be done fairly easily compared to trying to do an adult's. All right, second thing is, should you merge your bank accounts with your partner? Joint accounts are used to pool accounts and can be great for shared goal setting. And since bills are paid from one account, everyone can see how the money is being spent. It is also sometimes helpful for those who are tempted to spend, because now both parties can see the purchases that are being made, and that just adds to your accountability. But keeping your accounts separate might also be the way to go if one partner is carrying a lot of debt. Until that debt's paid off, any third-party creditors can take money from joint accounts versus a single spouse's account. So if you have one in your name and one in your spouse's name, they can only go get money out of the account of the person who has that debt versus any joint accounts. The problem with separate accounts, though, can be managing any shared expenses. So clear communication is going to be really important during this scenario if you choose to keep two different accounts.
Another option is that you could consider using a linked account if you don't want to have a shared account yet. So this allows fast and easy transfer of funds that you can both access and use for joint expenses. Additionally, you can have your paychecks go to a joint account, and then a portion is allocated out to individual accounts that it's linked to. This might be a good idea if you're in a new relationship, and it could be a good way or step in slowly to having shared accounts. So in any case, be sure and name someone as your transfer on death, TOD, so that your banking accounts can be immediately transferred to someone to avoid going through your will and the lengthy probate process.
I know for myself, I have money go in to a checking account from my employer, but immediately my bank then disperses that money into other accounts of mine. So different projects or different reasons for saving. And so you could do something similar to that if you were trying to sort of slowly merge two accounts as well. Okay, another thing that came up was paying down a loan that you owe interest on so that you can start to save money. As an example, if you owe 5% on a loan, let's just say the loan's $20,000, you're going to be paying over the course of 5 years about $5,000 in interest, actually closer to $5,500. And that's to solve that, you're taking $20,000 times that 5% is really 0.05 and multiplying that by 5 and getting $5,525. So if you have money that you can apply towards this debt, but you've been keeping it in a checking or savings account, and right now I looked it up and it's about 0.5% annually, over those 5 years doing the same calculation, that comes out to, instead of multiplying by 0.05, you're multiplying by 0.0005, you're getting $50.50. That means that keeping money in that account, instead of applying it to a current debt, is going to cost you about $5,500.
It does make sense to not pay off that loan if you have an incredibly low interest rate, or if you want to put aside all money that will be matched by an employer in your 401k. You would rather, put a big chunk of money towards that. Or if you are building or keeping an emergency fund for like 3 to 6 months expenses. During COVID, 23% of Americans said their biggest financial regret was actually not having an emergency fund, according to a bank rate survey that was done in June. So there are some scenarios where it might not be as beneficial to pay off the loan right away. You also want to consider paying down the highest interest loans first while still paying the minimum balance on your other loans. So say you have 3 loans, a credit card, a student loan, and a store card. So if your student loan has an 8% interest rate and you have a $20,000 debt on that, and your credit card has a 17% interest rate with a $2,000 bill, and your store card is at a 22% interest rate with a $500 bill.
Even though it sounds like, that $20,000 debt, you want to be paying it off first, the student loan, although it has that greatest amount of balance, it has the lowest interest rate in this scenario. So by paying the smaller loans off first, that credit card and the store card, you're going to eliminate that debt altogether. You're going to save money on the interest. And then whatever the payments you were making towards those 2 smaller loans, you can continue to make those payments, but put it towards that student loan. It's going to increase the payments to the student loan, and in that way, shorten the duration of how long you have to pay that lower interest loan and pay it off sooner. I know for myself, I definitely take advantage of cars or large purchases when they say 18 months, same as cash, buying my roof or paying for the kitchen or buying a new computer or even purchasing a new vehicle. When those interest rates are 0 or less than 1%, it is worth it to go ahead and keep putting your money somewhere safe, but putting your money somewhere to make money and making sure you're paying off that loan, though, prior to the 18 months. There's no reason to pay for it all up front. You can put your money to work for you and still pay it off before that final due date. It's a game, though, because you have to make sure you pay it off before the end of that term, or you're going to pay incredibly high interest rates on that.
A listener actually asked about budgeting in the new year for some upcoming home improvements. Now, they didn't mention specifically what the project was, so we looked into just some general costs for renovating certain rooms of your house. Of course, again, these are general. Your location, the level of details that you're going to put into each of these things are going to change the cost, so you definitely want to get your own estimates. But Dave Ramsey has suggestions for 3 different rooms in your house. Your kitchen is likely to cost between $13,000 and $37,000 to renovate. A bathroom can run from $6,000 to $15,000, and a basement can go from $11,000 to $29,000.
To save for these, you're going to want to consider the budgeting impact that these ideas can have. So, for example, 1, what is the value of your home? You want to choose projects that are going to increase your home's value and that you can expect to make back on when you actually sell your home. Not that you can't update your man cave or your she shed, but know that those aren't necessarily that will earn you the most back when you go to sell your property as well. But of course, make a budget. Get at least 3 quotes and make sure you're using the same finishes for comparisons. You don't want them just to say, yes, a black cabinet, but you're talking about, 3 different types of material. So it's very important that you're making comparisons of apples to apples. And you might want to go ahead and find the handles or the tiles or whatever your finishes are so that you can say to the contractor, these are the specific materials that I want to use. And that way they will give you a quote and you will know exactly what it will cost from each of them, because some of them are going to be able to even get you a discount depending on where you're looking for those products. And finally, the lowest bid is not always the best. You want to ask to talk to former clients of theirs and ask them if they followed their timeline, what kind of cost overages there were, and of course, the quality of their work.
If you're trying to save money and you have experience in this, you might consider doing like the demolition part yourself. You may need to consider the cost of haul away if it will be more than your standard trash costs, though. Something to keep in mind. You should also price out your own materials and even possibly consider hiring out some of the jobs. For example, if you are doing a bathroom but need some electric work done, maybe finding an electrician on your own could save you some money in that situation. You can also consider painting a room yourself. This could save you almost half by using some of your own elbow grease.
And you know what else occurred to me is that we need to make sure when we're budgeting that although they're telling you what the cost is, you should consider a 15% overage as a surprise cost. If you don't end up using it, yay, you can deduct that from what the total cost of the project was. But just know that things will pop up that will probably require either more money or some kind of part of the project just gets bigger than was anticipated originally.
Yeah, it always does.
All right. And finally, Jennifer and I decided to make some financial goals for ourselves based on this listener question for the coming year. And we found that according to moneyunder30.com, they suggest that no New Year's resolution is worthwhile if it doesn't last. One of the most important things is making a plan for your goal and trying to find a way to budget for that goal is to write it down and just keep track of it. Keeping it somewhere that you're going to see it fairly often so that you are reminded of whatever your goal is very valuable, and trying to keep it in mind when you're making your other financial decisions in what it is that you're working towards. So personally, I'd like to save for some new carpeting. I decided that past few days. The first thing I'm going to do is start taking measurements and then pricing out costs and choices. I'm not going to go pick any carpeting, but at least by having the square footage, I'll have a general idea when I'm looking at what the bottom line price will be for all this, and then start budgeting it. And then I'll start putting some money aside and plan for doing this in the fall.
My financial goal for this year is going to be to try to get our food budget down. So we this year kept track of all of our receipts and we were really good about it. So we have a cost estimate of like our entire year's expenses. And so I can see the specific number of how much I spent on groceries and restaurants and all that this year. So my goal is to get that number lower for next year. My plan to do that is, which this is always a plan and always a struggle, to be meal prepping and planning so that I can be better about sticking to my, weekly and monthly food budget in order to reach that goal. My struggle is, of course, that I want us to eat healthy. And, I realize I could buy ramen and we could have a really low budget, but that's not where we're at right now. And I want us to make good, healthy choices as well. Right. And still, try to have a better food budget. So that's my, one of my financial goals for this year. And I actually recently came across this interesting website to help you stick to your goals. It's called stick.com, STICKK. And what they do is you set a goal, and it doesn't have to be a financial goal. It can be like an exercise goal or any other personal work goal, whatever. And you set your goal and then you actually put money on that goal. So if you don't reach your goal, you have to pay out whatever stakes you've put on it, so that you can set it up to have the money be sent to a friend. You can have it be sent to a charity, or my favorite, the anti-charity, which means you can send it to a charity that you don't like. So every time you don't go to the gym, if that's been your goal, then they're going to send $10 to some organization that you hate. But it is interesting. And they do say that, you're more likely to stick to your goal if you have something like this holding you accountable. If you're going to be losing money because you didn't go to the gym or whatever it is, it could be a great motivator for some people. Would you use it?
I don't know that I would use this because I'm not big into negative reinforcement as much, but I have heard of, and I would be interested in coming up with a goal with like a friend so that the two of you are then held accountable to each other. And then let's just use your, anti-charity as an example, so that if I don't make my goal, but that one of us is closer to our goal in some way, that's where that other person, you get to pay towards their charity, whatever it is. So I like that idea of that accountability of somebody else, but I'm not as in love with negative reinforcement like that. But, it's not a terrible thing. I mean, you know what you're signing up for if you decide to do that. And if that's what motivates you, then I am 100% for that.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you can do this with anybody. You don't have to do it through their website. You can make you can talk about it with an accountability partner and make a deal with them to help you stick to your goals, which is always a good idea too.
Yeah. I do like that idea though. Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else?
This is the start of a new year. So you might have some financial goals in mind. So it's a great idea to just start with one that you can manage and go for it.
Thanks for listening to Finances and Listener Questions. We know you chose to listen and we're grateful. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share, and consider leaving a review because it helps bring financial education to others and helps find us more easily. And you can do that in Apple Podcasts. Please let us know what question you'd like answered by going to our website at financesand.net. You can now find infographics on these topics here in our show notes and on our website. Finances and does not provide tax or legal advice, and nothing in this podcast is to be construed as such. Always consult a tax, accounting, or legal professional for advice on your specific situation. Remember, I went to school, so you don't have to.
We had some listeners.